Although I did see her
For the same
too, South Albany, Jim. I just stormed. But I'm sure there's someone here too.
That was me.
I didn't run attendance reports. Two more subjects during the year. I appreciate it.
I just got
Thank you. Mr. Sprays.
touching things.
Oh, breathe. All the we share.
There's no limits on the sharing there.
Yes. Not always caring, sharing is not always caring. It's just nice with the general community these things also even area there's not anything like specific as it's coronavirus or RSV or whatever, it's just these are the things. So norovirus, that's a rough one. And once a case of norovirus shows up in class, it's, and that's
Oh, yeah.
that is, I don't know.
Norovirus one spread by rodents.
No, something called the cruise ship.
Cruise ship virus.
There's diarrhea and puking.
Yeah, I, for some reason I thought that it was which one of the ways that it was spread.
Oh,
It's
just airborne, I don't know.
Explosive.
Both at the same time.
I think so. Okay, we'll go ahead and call this work session to order. We're here tonight to discuss what we can for safety purposes and how we can address things and protocols and stuff. And the board decided last week at our meeting that we were just kind of sit back and listen, speak when needed to, but otherwise we'll leave it up to the staff to talk and come up with different things, because you guys are here day to day doing everything, so we'll just kind of step aside and let you guys have this. But you know, we're here. You have a question, or if we have questions, we can ask. So that's kind of the premise of what we're going to do. So Susan, you got anything else?
No, I think the only thing that I have is, because of a meeting of the board, and there's not a whole lot of public here, but I want to make sure public has a way of being able to leave their information. So I put some half sheets of paper on the table over there, so if there are questions at the conclusion of our meeting or as we go or things like that, that there's a way to have those be listed and be heard, just as we move forward, because we know this isn't gonna be a decision tonight to button everything up and have it sorted out, so.
Okay,
Cool.
that being said, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna share, information here. I think that I want to start out with, what prompted this meeting, in the conversations over the summer to be able to schedule this work session. We may have a slightly different flavor than now, today, than what they did at that point in time. And so wanted to start with what we call this morning kind of naming the elephant in the room. And naming the elephant in the room has to do with our threat that came through. And I got some commentary from people about, thank you for putting it out. And I got some commentary from people that said, how dare you wait and put it out so late. So my response to that was being able to say, could I have put it out earlier? Yes. The issue really was a setup of information heard on bus video footage in a look at another incident. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The way our policy is set up, which we'll talk about as we go, I don't encourage us to change, says that if there is no lockdown, no secure in place, no evacuation, the kinds of things that we'll talk about, there is not the need to communicate that with anyone. Because of the instances of threat that were around us and what happened earlier this September in the shooting across the country, I didn't want to do that. I couldn't do that and have the community hear, my goodness, there was a threat in our own school district and you didn't tell us. And so had we done any of those, lockdown or evacuation or things like that, our obligation would have been to tell families and students of the Philomath Academy as the affected school. Garth did a great job of pulling, where is he? There you are. Garth did a great job of pulling that information together, and we made the choice because we are such a tight-knit community, and because all our schools know all our schools, that we would be remiss if we didn't put something out to everybody in the community. So as I'm sitting at my computer at 9:30 in the morning, which I admit I learned was not before the school day started, my choice really was, I can send this and know I'm sending it late, or I cannot send it at all and see what happens from there. The choice I made was to send it, to be able to get information out to our community so that we can be as transparent as possible. Especially as we're seeing threats like we've never seen them before in places around us, and this is kind of our first foray into ever being in that kind of a condition where the need was compelling to be able to kick it out to everybody. So I wanted to just put that out on the table because I know that is, for people who are viewing and others, that's just a piece of the puzzle that people want to know and have been asking about. That was a product of my follow-up email, and you'll hear more in terms of what we have for you tonight. But really just wanted to clear the air because I knew that's the question on everybody's mind, to be able to say, what are you going to tell us? So I just needed to open with that. So the intent of tonight is really to be able to take a look at our policies around safety, our protocols, and things like that. So one of the things that we wanted to look at is the notion of safety every day. I'm going to get one of these lights so that it might be easier to see. Is that better?
Yeah.
And wanted us to start there to be able to take a look at what people may not know that we do. So for instance, the doors around each of our schools are secured following the start of each school day. And we've made it a concentrated effort, especially at the start of the year, to work with students not to prop doors. For staff not to prop doors, so that we can make sure that we have a closed, secure facility. At Clemens Primary, Philomath Elementary, Philomath Middle, and Philomath High, those 4 schools have locked vestibules that require electronic permission for somebody to buzz you into those schools for entry into the school office or halls. It is not the case at Blodgett, and we know we have to look at that. Blodgett's kind of got its own nature and anomalies, and we know that's, they keep their door locked all the time, and they have a bell, a buzzer, to be able to ring folks in, so they can see who's around and who's there. The places, Philomath Academy and the district office are the places that don't have vestibules. And so, as we talk about key card locks and things like that, we're looking at those sorts of things. In fact, I talked to Mark about it today, to just be able to take a look at what do we need to do to give that sense of safety and security here and in the district office in the same sort of way. So that's on our radar. The other thing is that we are obligated to do safety drills at least once a month. And within those safety drills, they involve instruction and expectation of students and staff. So when we go through, for instance, a first earthquake drill, we talk through what the process and protocol is, what is it that you're supposed to do, how do you respond, how do you react. Same thing with fire drills, where do you go, where's your line, where's your whatever. Same thing with lockdown drills, which we do also. And then wanted to kind of open up, because I know these folks have a plethora of information about other things that are done that might not be known that address safety in our schools every day. So I was just gonna open it up and see if there are some additions.
I have a question first.
Yeah.
Ask a question. On the primary, elementary, middle, and high school, those are all electromagnetic clocks.
Yes.
Do any of the schools have any sort of battery backups or generators in place? Does any of the school have them?
I'm gonna look to,
What happens if the power is out and on? Okay.
Oh, they do automatically.
good point.
Because they have to, for some point, you have to be able to get out of the building.
Right.
And I don't know this, but in an electrical panel, those are on their own circuit, they don't take much batteries. We have some on some gates that are electromagnetic, and they just have little tiny battery backups.
Yeah, it would be a small battery for sure.
So if that's something that should be, if it's something you tie into a breaker box, it wouldn't run the whole school, but maybe the little battery backups just to keep those magnetic.
We just tied in with the security system, because the security system's backed up and for the fire alarm, you know what I mean? So it'd be just like that.
Because we can go multiple days at a time with those magnetic boxes with power out off that little tiny battery.
Yeah, because they don't take much.
Good suggestion, thank you, I appreciate that.
I would say like when we talk about like some of those example drills, those become our protocols that are standardized not only in our district, but across our region. So when we talk about law enforcement, the I Love You Guys Foundation, which has our SRPs, our research base to be effective. So for example, like in a lockdown, we all have these lock blocks because the secure, getting behind the locked door is what is most important in that situation. So like the facilities where all of our doors have lock blocks.
Everybody knows what a lock block is, there's one in that door right there.
So the doors are always locked to classrooms, and if, instead of fumbling with keys, you slide that across and then you're behind the locked door. Even the door, the one door that we don't have a card reader where kids flow in and out of recess has a lock block on it. And we always keep one of our assistants kind of stationed nearby. Sometimes kids have to go in the bathroom, but in that area so that we could just very quickly have kids come inside and secure that door. So that's something that, and then so having our PA system, our all-call system, and having those lock blocks, those things are kind of key to the broader picture of what are our tools, how will we communicate, and so.
Just out of curiosity, how does a lock block work when a door opens outwards from the door?
The what?
Just how does a lock work on a door that opens outward instead of inward?
Well,
Is it actually
literally, the door is
opening?
locked. The lock just blocks it from completely closing. And then when you pull it, it closes and it locks.
So instead of having to reach out to use your keys to lock the door or whatever, that you can slide
just
that
a
lock.
manual.
Okay, because I've seen the other ones where the door opens the other way, and I understand the mechanic of it, but when it opens, is it just a pressure holding it?
Yeah, literally, it's physical rubber thing between the door and the jamb. So it leaves about that
Okay,
much.
so I
it
can't see
latch.
the jam from here,
It
so that
can't
makes
latch,
more
it
sense.
can't latch
Okay.
here, and then as soon as you pull it, it closes and latches.
Okay,
So it's just a physical barrier to the door closing completely. So the door can't lock. The door stays locked, but it can't latch until you pull that out.
Great question, thank you.
I couldn't see the jam from here, so
Okay.
I wasn't, I was like, is it
I
just?
had one in my
Okay,
classroom
keep the door
for
shut.
10 years, I think we put them in, probably right about 2000, maybe less than that, 2010, 2012, something like that, is when we started putting in buildings.
So
I've
that's
mostly
the
seen them used to hold the door open,
in
so.
your classroom. So would something like that work on the district office and Plymouth Academy?
It does, the thing that's the struggle with here is, you know, the elementary school, I'll just use it because it's sitting right over there. When you walk into the school, you can't reach the hallway or the office to the school
Right.
within that vestibule. But you can open that outside door to get into that vestibule area. There is nothing here. And so what
Right.
happens when somebody wants in, there's nothing.
Gotcha.
And so the conversation has been, as we look at our key card locks, might that be something that is added, for instance, to that door? So that if somebody needs to come in, Mark, I'm gonna let you talk about it, because you can talk about it more
So
technically correct than I can.
we've been doing our due diligence and doing research and demoing different door locking systems. And they vary, but what it comes down to is they rely so much on technology at this point. That's why they have included me in this conversation and Joey's in this conversation as well. And the management of those systems and keeping everyone safe. So what we want to do is if the district wants to move forward with something like this, is yes, we can get door locking mechanisms put in to this building. You know, and we're looking to upgrade our existing cameras as we currently have.
As I recall, you said the phone system had been updated and the locking system, basically the guts of the brains of the program are updated. To add more, you have to update the system.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually the phone system is going to be deployed this fall, so it's being built as we speak.
So the phone, I don't know this, but the phone system is tied to is there such thing as like someone outside so we can say, hey, I'm here trying to do it through a phone system and unlock the door?
No, I mean, they do make those systems, but they're so costly that it just becomes something that, in the management of it too, because you would need to hire an engineer who's versed in just that, you know, it becomes way too costly for it.
Other things that happen for us.
One other thing I have for the high school, all the classroom doors are keyed, pass by all, is what they call it, so any key that goes in a lock in high school, you can put in there, lock that door from the inside, and that's an extra measure, so if someone stole my keys, or Mark's keys, or Mike's keys, they're not coming in from the hallway. That door has to be taken apart or unlocked physically from the inside. I know this because a couple teachers have locked their keys inside and we've had to take the doors apart, so it really does work.
How recently is that? I don't remember that.
They did that with the new build.
Oh, did they never tell us? 'Cause
They probably didn't.
I was in the new build for 4 years plus 4 years.
Yeah, I don't think everyone really understands how those work.
Okay.
But if you lock it from the inside, you better be in there. Don't lock it from the inside late.
That's the constant look. I think one of the other things that's a part of our work now and the climate we live in and things like that is our relationships with local law enforcement police, fire, and sheriff, is reinvigorating in a good way, and in an excited way, to be able to make sure that we're working together on protocols, on process, on,
The American Conference is reportedly talking to Air Force.
In case you want to know.
I knew I should love that.
Can't take him anywhere, can you?
So, that has been a big plus for us. We also know, another question I have gotten asked in terms of threat protocol is, what happens if we need more than just a full-on police? They have been very good with involving other entities when we need to have other entities involved. I also know from experience back when I was at the elementary school of having a panic alarm pushed. And it brings out virtually everybody and their brother and sister, not just full of police or full of fire. It takes a farther reach to be able to say something big is happening, get here now. We were lucky when it was that new because I had no clue what was happening, and it would have been a real mess. But that's the design of those systems.
I have a question, I'm sorry, Joe. The panic button, so where is that located, and is an individual classroom able to alert, like is the teacher able to alert the office or the district office? Or
Right now, alarms are in offices and close locations. They are not in every classroom. One of the things that we're looking at and that's being pushed is looking into silent classroom alarms. And part of that, then, what we look at with that is if I have an alarm hanging around my neck, and I've got a kid that just decides they want to hug me, and that alarm gets pushed versus, I mean, so what are the pros and cons of that? But we're looking at that to be able to make sure we know. We also, I want to say the phones are in a place where there can be communication from a classroom to the office via telephone to be able to say, I see something.
Yeah,
To
just
be able to
curious,
do
but
that.
And then some of the classrooms, when the new PA systems were put in a few years ago, and some of the, like PMS has some of them, I believe CPS has them, there's panic buttons in the classrooms. And what that does is it alerts the office if there's an emergency, but it also turns on a speaker that's in the ceiling that's two-way. So the office can hear what's going on in the classroom, even if the teacher isn't speaking. Or if the teacher does speak, they can hear it clearly as well and talk back.
okay.
So it would be great to put that in everywhere, but if they go the route, depending on the way the law when it comes out, they may require wireless panic buttons everywhere, and that's what Susan was referencing.
Yeah.
As we all know what happened in Georgia, you know, the company that was installed, they installed a product called Centegix, and that's the company that makes the wireless panic buttons. They put those in a week prior to the shooting, and it was credited for saving lives. It was all over the news. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I researched that company last year, and they are very expensive in those products. And so hopefully we can get some sort of like funding opportunity or something for something like that. So.
Yeah, the state has some funding. It's not extensive, but there is some funding that can help support some of those things, so we're looking into that too. So I thought we would start with our policy. And our policy, when it talks about threats of safety, uses terminology about what a safety threat action is. And we're going to talk about a suggested alteration, but in this iteration, it says means a lockdown, lockout, shelter in place, or evacuation that is initiated by a school in response to a safety threat and is not a planned threat. And so our policy says when a school or district initiates that safety threat action, the school district shall issue communication as expediently as possible. The communication will be issued in culturally appropriate languages with parents and guardians of students attending the school at which the safety threat action occurred. We've already made a determination that I think policy is good. We can extend beyond that, and we have talked about that in terms of action as opposed to policy, to be able to look at reaching out to the wider audience of our district, more often than not, instead of just the school. The catch we'll come back to is the thing that we don't want by tightening up our policy to say every chance we get this, we're going to communicate to every person, every parent in our district, is the instances where we make a determination of an elementary school on the playground saying, I'm going to kill you, where there's no motive, there's no means. And we can do an assessment of that. We'd be communicating with people all the time. And so we want to make it reasonable, knowing that we can extend beyond the scope of the policy. But if the policy is tight, we got to follow tight. And so that's just in thought about how we move forward. Yeah.
One thing real quickly, we started talking about communication and everything else. One of the things that some people don't realize is that in certain situations, too much communication can be a bad thing. If you're informing the whole community that something has happened, and all of a sudden parents start rushing to that school and start interfering with the reaction of law enforcement, fire, et cetera, it can be a problem, and has been a problem in some situations in the past, not necessarily in our community, but I know I've seen that in the past. So you do have to worry about communication from that standpoint as well.
And you'll see at the end, I put in a slide that said we're really about policy, procedure, partnerships, policy, procedure, and professional learning that extends to families and our staff and to our students and our community, because that's one of the things that may not necessarily be known. Who knows that we do drills once a month and we have to do that by law? That's important to be able to make sure we share. And so what are the education components that we need to be able to make sure people know? The other piece of that is to be able to let people know you're not going to be able to, in certain situations, just come to your school and pick up your student. And so we need to educate about that so that there's the preparedness.
To use an elementary example, just also in law and policy, if there is a student who expresses frustration maladaptively, like age inappropriately, and says, I'm mad about a playground game, and I make a threat to another child, and we assess it, and we do that, we still are required to communicate to the student who received that. And so I want to delineate that we're not sending a message out to the broader community about that, but we're talking about, when your child came home today and heard this on the playground, just know that this student was frustrated or whatever, and here's how we're addressing it, here's what we're, without getting specific of how we discipline that or what other tools we would put into that, but that is something that we do, and there's we adopted a few years ago, like many places in Salem's work, that, where, is there an actual intent, is there a capacity, is there access, is there a plan, all of those things. And when we contact those families, we're saying, hey, your student made this threat, and so these are things that also, are really critical, that we're communicating with both families when we have those kinds of threatening situations, and that's all in policy of timelines and all of that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I mentioned earlier that the current language in the policy talks about lockdown, lockout, shelter in place, or evacuation. My proposal is that we change that language to align with the I Love You Guys Foundation language more closely, so that a safety threat action means holding, securing, lockdown, evacuation, or shelter in place. Those are the 5 standard response protocols. The biggest change is lockdown and lockout. And changing that terminology, because as soon as somebody hears locked out, they think locked down, and so how do you get the words enough different to be able to have people know the distinctions? And so that is a piece of that, which leads then into a proposed action item that we asked our policy committee to review this particular policy with the changes that have been recommended or suggested here this evening, to recommend to the school board for approval. So we put that back through the look of our policy committee to be able to make adjustments and make sure that it reads according to how we want it to read. Questions, comments before I keep moving? I mentioned the emergency drills and instruction, the at least one drill required each month. Fire emergencies, earthquake, safety threats, we have to do at least 2 safety threat lockdowns. We can look at the differences within that, but typically they're lockdowns that we do, and 2 earthquake drills in the course of the year. So of all those in a month, in the months of the school year, we have to do those things. And so it's our opportunity for teaching. When we get to our safety threats especially, Fulham Police Department has been often involved with us. They want to walk with us to be able to see what they notice in hallways, where can PA systems be heard and not heard, where might there be a door prop, where might there be this, that, or the other thing, so that they can learn from us. The other thing I discovered this morning, thanks to Joey telling us, is we also have our police department that have in their cars keys to our schools. And so they don't have to bust down doors, and so it's a connection. It's nice in a small community that we can do that, and they've got some access. So that's really good. And then I added that we have to do bus evacuation drills twice a year also. Yeah, Joe?
When was the last time we did a major emergency drill where we actually, I remember occasionally doing one where we had, students that were laying down as if they had been, injured in an earthquake or whatever, and then we actually had police and fire actually involved in it. It's a pretty major event. We only did it once every 2 or 3 years, if I remember.
We did one, it's been a long time ago at Fulham Middle School at the stage.
Yeah, I think the last time we talked with Chief Gursky about this, it's quite a large undertaking
I know,
that not everybody wanted to participate in again, with the hospital and everything else. So we talked about maybe doing more of a local, so it's not as all-encompassing. And this was a side conversation last year, so, but it's been a while since we've done the full scale with that, included light flight and everything else. So it is something that we've inquired about.
I don't remember one with a helicopter. I remember a couple that we did more extensive stuff,
So when we talk about our connection, and it's nice that there are districts around us that also have, based on police input and we look at other districts, we look at a resource called the I Love You Guys Foundation. And so this is how we build the information about our standard response protocol. They have got signage. You can actually print out the sign that says, do not enter, drill in process, or something that can be slapped up on a door that says, do not enter. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are available to us. And I didn't bring, I pulled off their 2025 K-12 manual, and I meant to bring it in, but I don't have it. So when they talk about what is a hold, what does secure mean, what is a lockdown, what is evacuate, and what is shelter in place, and having responses to each of those. So it's the group we follow. So they have, in an emergency, take action. So they say hold a hold means you're keeping students in your room or area, you're in the hallways. Secure means get inside and lock the outside doors. Lockdown is lock lights out of sight. Evacuate is to a specified location, and shelter is just a hazard and safety strategy. So we use that when we look at, thank you, those sorts of things. And so this piece again is a part of the education, but it's an explanation of some of the things that we look at and what we consider and what we can have happen within a school. Excuse me, our notion is to be able to put out when we can what's happening, but again, sometimes it's going to be the safety of the students and the staff that comes first. And so if it takes us a half an hour or 15 minutes or whatever to make sure that we got all the bases covered, we're going to get that out as soon as we can. But the ultimate motive is to be able to keep our staff and students safe. And everything that we can to ensure that we're making that happen. Yeah, this was the picture of, they have, this was the book of the standard response protocol, and it is full of letters, forms, agreements, all kinds of things like that. And so for us, it's making sure that we've all done different layers of different pieces of that. And so now it's really about, now that we've got a solid sense of support from our law enforcement community, and we have coalesced as a group, we're now looking at how do we take those protocols and procedures and make sure they align across all our schools. Abby, can you talk about what you did with the processes, the response to these?
So at CPS, I had created documents that showed in this type of event, let's say we're doing a fire drill, that's an evacuation drill. So we're doing a fire drill, this is the expectation of the administrator. That says, this is how we start the thing, this is what we'll say, this is what we'll do, and all of the protocols, how to communicate, and then there's rules and protocol for administrators, there's protocol for what the classroom does, and also what facilitators do. And I did that for every one of those 5 evacuations. So what I thought was we could use it as a template, as an admin team, and we could unite, and it will tweak in each building a little bit because each building is different. But if we have a unified way of doing that, then I think that would really help the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna do this. We talked a little bit about this already, about with our policy, just being clear about when communication may not happen to everyone. So the responses that don't result in a hold secure, although we've talked about those as a group and said we really need to get that information out and let people know. The statement of I'm going to kill you made at recess between students, or an argumentative student or adult making a threatening statement. Again, we have to look at, like Eric said, those steps of context, motive, means, all those sorts of things. The other time would be if it's an incident that does not bear imminent threat, which is the elementary school, or that has been totally mitigated. So there are sometimes we hear about threats that it's mitigated about 10 minutes after we find out about it, and so there's nothing that's done. This is where we also want the input and reaction to be able to say, there are reasons that we can't, do differently, but want to be real open and have opened our doors to more communication around the course.
I have a question on that. Who is determining motive and means in these instances?
What we're talking about originally would be the administrator or the counselor who's in each of the schools, just being able to take a look at, we're getting students away from each other and out of a situation.
It mentions a parent. So who in a school can determine motive and means of parenting a threat is my concern. I'm more concerned about adults and people not.
Yeah, well, and one of those things would be, could be dependent upon your situation. If I say I'm gonna throw a brick at you, I have a brick in my hand. Can I do that right now? So that's immediate threat. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't come back around. We're gonna talk about some of those as we're able to move forward. But that's what we're looking at, is do we need to roll into any one of those lockdown, secure, things like that? Because we see that motive and that means very clearly. Or is it the kind of thing that we need to watch out for that may come back around at us again, and things like that? We do our due diligence, we call the police if we need to, all those kinds of things.
So, yeah, what's kind of nice, law enforcement on some of those things where it sits, we don't know, we would call law enforcement and get their involved and get their assessment. That's what I would.
Yeah, there's actually levels, so we might have a staff student, or, there's a threat assessment, like we aren't sure, so then we move to level 1, and then or up to level 2, so there are levels of processes that are helpful in determining those things, and there's a set of questions that are done.
So one of the things that I started just in draft, and this follows the same process and protocol of what Abby has put together at Clemens, but I put in it, and I don't like the word of non-imminent threat, because that's, I don't like it, but it was a starter. To be able to say in those kinds of situations where we don't have to lock down, shelter in place, evacuate, any of those kinds of things, that our preparation says that staff and students should receive annual training in responding to uncomfortable or unsafe events, know the exits to remove from a threat to a safe zone, and one of the things I stole from Abby was make sure you carry your keys all the time. Response, and again, this was just a start, ensure immediate safety of students and staff. I stole another piece of language, like I called it pre-STAT. We have student threat assessment protocols. This is kind of the, do you have means, motive, those kinds of things, and kind of that quick run through of what do we know and what do we find out. Contact law enforcement as might be needed, and contact the superintendent so that I'm aware of what's happening there also. In the cases of students, I put down, we want to contact the parent, parents or guardians of the instigators and victims. We want to complete a student threat assessment if it's necessary, and consider what do we need to offer in terms of safety supports, what do we need to put in place in terms of discipline action, what do we need in terms of suspension pending, or suspension pending expulsion, or a no trespass order, and being able to put those things in place with immediacy. With our adults, it's considering those safety supports and the no trespass orders, because we can't do a discipline action plan. We can for our staff, but we can't in the instance of community members that come into our school. And then the recovery is about resuming normal operations as soon as possible, communicating with need-to-know staff, if needed, debrief with key staff, which may include law enforcement, and document incident actions and response. Again, this was a start to be able to take a look at that process and protocol, to be able to give us some modicum of consistency to move forward. And I'll come back to this in just a second. The idea, and as a part of some proposed actions, would be to charge the Philomath School District leadership team with editing and aligning procedures like that for the standard response protocols in each location that look at administrative actions, classroom actions, facilities and custodial actions, and technology. That was one of the places that I added in, because if there's ever an instance where we need to cut technology access, if we need to take a look into an online threat, which some of you heard that Monroe School District was shut down Monday? Yesterday. Monroe Middle School in Eugene was also closed. Monroe something in another state was also closed. So somebody had a penchant for going after everything in Monroe. But all those places got the same sort of thing. And so that's an instance where I think we need to also look at what are our technology instances and considerations as we move.
Well, the no trespass order for adults, parents, somebody not part of the school, can there be a template made up that's already in place that is instant, so if there is a parent that's a threat, you're not trying to get hold of legal aid to help, there's already something that the police could issue that day. It can be revised later, but if there was a blanket for each school, here's a no trespass, so if you have a threat, it can be the city police or the sheriff, whoever issues them to that, not through the mail or anything, that you call law enforcement, they issue that day. If it's something that can be revised later on, it can be revised, that way it's not being revised as it goes out. So that way there's an instant stop, you can't come to the property, And then if it's something that allows them to come to a game or something like that, it can be revised, but if somebody comes to the elementary school and Eric has, that they have to remove that, they have something they give, the sheriff issues that day, or city police says they can't come back, that gives time to then sort it out, but it's an instant stop. I would think that's something the legal counsel could have written out for the school.
And legal counsel doesn't write that for us. We write it, they give us feedback. So now that we have that, do we have a template? Yes. Now, based on actions that we had to enact on last spring.
And should legal counsel write that up?
That's not the way they work with us. It's a different setup than just a retainer.
But it's something that you have in place now that has clear
Yes.
guidelines that they can't
Yes.
say, they can't find things in it like that, it goes beyond school property, loopholes, something.
Right, the thing that we would need to decide at that point, the things that we would need to decide at that point in time, are we talking no trespass from the school or from the district? I mean, so there's just those couple of key questions that we need to have answered, but certainly we could issue, I mean, if we're talking about an evening event, of course, we're not gonna issue it the same day, but it would be within a 24-hour period that we could do that.
And I guess you bring a good point, if it's something that's issued that day per district, then you have time to sort it out, it's more of an instant response, like you are banned from all properties, and then you have time to sort it out, but that way it's not sorted out ahead of time, it's just instant, and the person is blocked until investigation or whatever it is, but that way, because it probably should be all this year. That, just something you have in place that's instantly available.
Yeah, and my only concern would be, if it really doesn't need to be district, I don't want to start that way. But
But if it.
But how do we know?
Yeah, so it gives you time to sort that out.
And why wouldn't it need to be district?
Right.
If somebody's threatening at one school, they're a dangerous individual for the whole district. And I know with students, we obviously want to return them into a classroom setting, we don't want to interrupt learning, we're trying to get things sorted out. I don't really care if a grown-up doesn't have access to the school for a little while we figure out what the story behind them making the threat is.
if the board wants,
It's
we can make
definitely a
it
different world to me,
all, we can
so.
make all district.
I'm in agreement with that. It
Okay.
should be all district.
Okay.
If it needs to be revised, it can be revised, but I think we need to draw a hard line.
All right.
That's my opinion.
What do each administrator, each person in school, do you guys think all district?
I mean, the idea is sometimes in situations where you have a tool to do like and I'm not again, like a student or, like obviously we have parents with lagging skills, so sometimes they might say something, there's a civility issue, but if there is a direct threat, to be able to take an initial like facility suspension, pending something to like contacting Susan to have that would seem like a reasonable thing to be able to issue or say, I'm gonna have to pause your access to the facility until I can, until we sort this out. So it's kind of like a suspension pending, the next steps. And so until that seems reasonable.
No, I know when a student's suspended from school, they're suspended from all campuses, from all districts. So, I mean, essentially, just, I think that it's what we do with student goals.
Yeah.
And it's, if you just do the initial all district, you can always come back and modify it. But the initial, because if you don't know what the threat is, who knows what might happen. So, yeah, I sort of agree with that. That the initial should be an all district and then modify if necessary if you're.
I'll also add too, we've had this before with children, teenagers, right, where there's no just order, pass order, and they still come. Or they sit from school, they still come. And so our call is to, sometimes when you handle civil, other times it's been law enforcement comes. So no matter if there's an order in place or not, they will respond to our request and come and deal with the situation, no matter if they have a piece of paper or not. Because the paper's not stopping them if they're that upset or whatever. So, but it is our awareness of who these people are that makes a difference, so we know how we can respond to call law enforcement to get their support.
And we did learn in this last, excuse me, in an earlier situation that, we've been sending all our no trespass orders through registered mail. Law enforcement said, let us deliver them. Let us hand deliver them.
And that was my point. Here at home, you get a knock on the door, and an officer says, you cannot go to school property.
Yeah.
You get mail.
The only time that would be a problem would be if a family has, a no trespass on their property. The police won't broach that if somebody has a no trespass on their property.
There's a sign.
Yeah, the sign. So, but those are the exception more than the rule. So, but if they deliver, the one thing they told us was, if we get a call about violating, and we don't know whether, I mean, the family can say, what, I never got that, I never heard, I never did. That there's the verification that the notification was actually delivered, which was a new piece of information for us, which was good. So, in the proposed, like I said, to charge the leadership team with editing and aligning the procedures and continuing to bring it back to make this an ongoing piece of information. The other proposed action is to continue our re-engagement in coordination with local law enforcement agencies, and so police, fire, and sheriff are our big ones right now. I'm excited about the re-engagement. I've had some great conversations over the last couple of weeks with Chief Gursky and his interest in being a part of really watching us grow. The other thing that I would like as a proposed action, based on the offer from the superintendent from the Lincoln County School District, is to invite their safety coordinator to share their process and their guide. Their coordinator that they have right now was called to Sandy Hook after their shooting in 2012, so was part of the response team, so has been in a personal connect with that kind of a scenario, and all their documentation and things like that are really predicated on current, I love you guys, current scenario and language, but also the real experience of being with kids in at Sandy Hook.
Susan, I'm a tad bit confused. Continue re-engagement in coordination with local law enforcement agencies. Were we not engaged with them?
We were, and then we hit a point just before COVID where there was some disagreement about protocol.
Interagency disagreements.
Thank you.
Not school district.
Not school district. And so we stopped the conversations because they were more confusing than they were helpful. Now we're to a place where all parties are ready to re-engage and have that dialogue and do the give and take that we need to be able to make it happen. So for the ongoing piece of it, I told you, I said it's really about partnership. And partnership includes our law enforcement agencies, but it really also includes our families and our communities and everybody else. We're living in an age where people want us to be transparent, and that's what we need to do. It's about policy, it's about procedure, and I mentioned the parent, professional, and peer learning, about being able to educate folks about, we had no idea that you used this I Love You Guys Foundation stuff. What is it? Where is it? What does it mean? What does it have? And so wanting to be able to really make sure we're walking that process. That was what I had. So I guess we can, questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, school and district folks' input. And I want us to continue to come back. Have the policy committee look at that policy, but also to be able to tighten up the procedural information and make sure that we can bring that back. Because I know that had been a request, is we want to know what happens here, what happens here, what happens here.
So is there, at this point in time, need a protocol if an incident happens and then it triggers different things down the line?
Yeah.
Is that in place now?
Yes.
Okay.
We've got, and that's all a part of the I Love You Guys Foundation that really talks about if this, then this. And what we're putting together in terms of responses. But that program, the I Love You Guys Foundation work is really what drives the direction of where we're going and what we're doing. I put into place in that one that, the phone calls go to law enforcement. I get a phone call, and when we kick out information. So we're starting to really get together with all the details. But we know that if we had to lock down a school, what we would do.
So I guess another question or thought is it the district, the administrators and staff, it's their call whether they call law enforcement or not, but if it was me, I would rather see them err on the side of maybe calling them when you maybe don't have to.
Oh, absolutely.
And get them on site and let them defuse whatever's going on, as opposed to, going down the list and then finally get to the spot where you call law enforcement. You might jump to law enforcement sooner rather than later.
In best practices, it's a two-way street, because if there's police activity in, like, let's say Mary Speak hardware store, in the neighborhood, law enforcement are aware of these terms, so they can call us and say, we want the school to go into a secure drill. Now, that doesn't mean that, there's suspected threat, activity here, so we can still keep learning, but no one's going in, no one's going out. That means we are doing recess inside, that means kids are still going to music class in the classroom, but we're just not, no one's going in, no one's going out, because that protocol has been, and as a building principal, like, I've never really been, trained as like an incident commander, so I'm always happy to hand that off to law enforcement as soon as,
The sooner the better.
yeah, you guys are, this is what you do, but we do need to have enough training, enough to do that initial incident command with those protocols, and then, like in my building with my office staff, we have safety meetings. And so like Bobby's my campus steward, he becomes the safety out, and Laura's a communicator, and then people know they have roles to then, we had a situation where a kid was clipped on the bike last Friday, and I'm calling Susan, and this person's doing this, and law enforcement's called, and all of a sudden, whatever is going on, then you go into the incident command mode, and I want to keep getting better at it, just to make sure that, everybody's got their part in those things. And that's I think of this stuff, all this work is kind of it's kind of like when they paint the Golden Gate Bridge, they paint it down, and they get to the end, and they start doing it again. And so you never arrive at this stuff. You just have to keep getting better at it and understanding the complexity of all these things. But that's helpful.
To Joe's comment earlier about parents, realistically, they're the last to be notified. They'll need to be notified because they don't have, like, if you have an active situation, people showing up, blocking, even let's say it's even a fire, there's all these cars in the way, the fire trucks can't get there. So I know the parents were upset over the timing of the email went out. I'm a parent of a kid in the school right here. I don't think as a parent, you're just in the way. And I know they want to be notified right away, but I would agree with the stance that it doesn't need to happen. They're the last ones to be notified because they can't help in that situation.
And part of that was where, for me, the need for education all the way around becomes very important, because we need to let people know why and what the expectations are. And so that became very clear very fast.
And I think the complaint, at least from some, has been not so much that they didn't get it immediately, but even after the fact, they didn't get it from the school district. They heard it through, word of mouth and from their neighbor or whatever. So when something does happen, when we can communicate, we should, but not before we should.
Right, and that was, in this instance, certainly knowing what time it was like, I can send it or I cannot. And we're in a time, in our country and at this point in our region with recent things that have happened, that, people need to see that we will be transparent, that we're not hiding anything from anybody, and we care to the utmost for the safety of the children and our staff. But that's what we do every day, is care for the kids.
Not to overemphasize the importance of the board, but I did notice that they're not listed on your communication plan for when the communication goes out to the board also. So that might just be a consideration to add in there. Again, not that we're super important, I have the ability to fix problems as much as I wish. I did want to mention, and I'm guessing several people around this table are already aware of it, but I'd like to share just in case. The state does have a wireless panic alarm grant.
Yeah, it's not very much.
$2,000 per school in your district.
Yeah,
A little bit.
that'll cover about one of those panic buttons,
Yeah.
but not these.
That's one more panic button than you would have had before you had it.
And that's what we are looking into.
Yes, yes.
And I want to appreciate you suggesting having a board on there, as for us, it's like, I think that it's important, because it says, as are like helping get the word out, and maybe having the background knowledge of when things are happening, like as an advocate, right? I mean, and I think that's huge, so I appreciate you saying that, because I know I look to the school board as a helpful resource for us, right? And us, like, getting other input, but then also being that supportive structure to the community, because you have your own networks, right, that are probably coming to you. So I really appreciate you saying that.
That's true, we do.
Sometimes very local networks.
And very immediate.
Just
And
appreciate it.
it's really hard to be blindsided,
Oh,
by
absolutely.
somebody in the community when something big happens and we're like, well, I don't know, I'm just on the board, I have no idea. It would be
I have
nice
no
to,
clue.
I have no clue, I don't know. And I mean, I know some of that doesn't pertain to what our function is as a school board.
But you need to know.
But as far as communication goes, and it is really nice to be in the loop.
And I think it's got to be able to answer community members' concerns.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when somebody asks me, it's rare, if somebody asks me, somebody said, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Well, that's where it's nice that we've got that text message with the school board group that, because I know in my situation, I don't check my emails during the day because I'm busy doing other things. But if I get a text message, the phone is usually right with me, and I get the text that says, hey, check your emails. So, we'll go do that, and, it could pertain to situations, like you're saying that, people are talking about this or that, and keep us from being blindsided.
Absolutely. And that was, I can't remember what the issue was, and one day I'm standing out saying I'm supposed to be a crossing guard, but I kind of let the board know. The other thing is we are in the process right now of implementing our communication piece. We had for the last couple of years, something called School Messenger that did a lot of our communication. The groups were never right, and I mean, it was kind of a mess. And so our technology department had found another solution that we will be implementing, and so we will have text capability again with families, which also for the same reason that you say, I mean, even our staff is, I don't read my email all the time. But if I can get a text message that points me to an email or gives me a word or two, that helps.
Is Flash Alert still active?
Flash Alert is still active. We debated about getting rid of it this year, but thought there's still enough people that access it, and the more ways that we have for people to find out what's happening, the better off we are. So we chose to maintain it.
Joe, last week we called about the high school, when the AC was out, didn't have windows that open too. And I didn't go to school here, I don't know, but does the high school classrooms have exterior doors? So say in the event of a fire, the windows don't open, or they have to break a window and get out then, is that?
From the second floor, they're jumping.
But from the first floor,
First floor, they're breaking the window, yeah.
So is that, and we're talking about safety, right now we're talking about this threat, but in terms of safety, is having a non-functional window to the outside a safety concern to be addressed as well? Because to me, I know when I went to elementary, in Corral School District, every classroom we had, except the CHS, which was a really old school, had exterior doors.
Yeah.
And that was part of the requirement, was the exterior door had to be checked every day, especially the Lincoln Elementary School, we checked, every day the student had to check, make sure it's locked on the outside, and open on the inside, that was part of the daily routine.
Yeah, the old wing has windows that open in the classrooms. The new wing upstairs and down do not.
Is there a reason they didn't put open windows in the middle school?
It was designed that way, I have no idea.
It
I'm
seems
surprised
silly.
that's code. I'm surprised we get away with that.
I think it has to do with the square footage of the room. If you don't exceed X amount of square footage, you don't have to have 2 exits. So there's bigger classrooms, like Mrs. Stevie's classroom, for example, she has 2 doors. They exit both into the hallway, but her classroom is bigger. So I think it was required for that. The science classrooms have 2 exits. One exits into a chemical storage area, which isn't great.
Is that like the kettle to the fire?
But that's just what it is, right?
Mhm.
And those are designed that way because of the square footage.
Is that something that should be looked at, and I guess I'm asking, I don't know, but should a functional window per classroom, even if it's second story?
I mean, it's something to consider for sure.
Well, the ones we had in the old wing before the remodel, were literally just the kind that go out at an angle, so you're not getting out that window without breaking it anyway, but at least you have for ventilation.
That's how that's how the old wing still is.
So they're still have
They're new windows, but they open the same
Still
way.
the same way.
Yeah.
And I would have a concern also if we're talking about, emergency response evacuation procedures. Do we have procedures in place for our students who have disabilities? If they're in a classroom where we're throwing a chair through a window, is a student in that classroom going to actually be able to get out of the building?
Yeah, so like at the high school, if the elevator shut down because of the fire alarm or something, which they do, we have, I don't remember what they're called, like a striker chair, I think is what the brand. And so you can run somebody down the stairs in that, if they have mobility issues. Is that what you're
Yeah,
referring
and
to?
everybody's trained in how to do that.
There
and
is
they have
trained
to do
staff,
that
but
if they have a kid in their
there was trained staff,
classroom.
have you ever used it?
But
It's
is
pretty
it,
cool.
is it a teacher down in the far wing on that end and the students up at the top of the second floor over there? Like, those are genuine concerns. It sounds like I'm being.
I don't know
I'm
for sure how many
very
staff have
experienced.
actually been trained. I just don't know. But I know we have one by each elevator. I mean, it's, right close to the elevator to use for the stairs.
Do you know how many have been trained? That's the first I've heard of this. Okay.
Have you ever seen it in the hallway?
I've never seen it.
Oh, man.
You should ride it, it's a good time.
It is pretty cool, yeah.
From the elementary teacher.
The look on your face was a dead giveaway, so that's fine.
Just teaching the old firemen here. I wouldn't have,
Striker with a Y, Striker, it's a medical.
They're very expensive chairs, I remember buying them, because
it's medical equipment, so it's expensive, it's pretty much, the way things
A
are.
pen, oh wait, no, it's
But
a
they only need
medical
to be in
pen.
high school.
But it's one of those ones that you have the students that would be interested in volunteering to be the person in the chair.
I guess sort of an easy way to answer a lot of these questions would be, is it possible to have a safety review of all the buildings during some of these planning processes? I know we're talking about safety, we're talking about a lot of different types of safety. And I do think we might need to segment out on different topics of safety, whether we're talking about technology, we're talking about facilities, we're talking about threats, mental health. That's a lot of different topics to try and cover in one group, so I think it would be wonderful if there were work groups and subcommittees with timelines and deliverables and business jargon. You tell I'm looking at job applications for the last time.
Hey, Joe,
Some
your
KPIs,
job,
give us.
your job would be a safety review. Susan, how much of this stuff can be done professional learning days? I mean, is it a subject for that, or is it something totally different?
No, it could be implemented into those days, yeah. Yeah, we can factor those things in for our staff. With the drills, we'll get a lot of that with students. with parents, I think we can do some community forums. Eric today just had somebody that asked last week something about the standard response protocols and,
My substitute teacher?
yeah, you whipped out you did a quick video.
Yeah, so with Zoom, you can just hit record, so I popped up the protocols, because one of my subs was asking about what do we do in a fire drill, and I'm like, it's hard to like, you have all these associate teachers, and Joe knows you pop in, and like, what am I gonna do with one of these things, and so, what that can be put into they do the harassment, they do those trainings, but that doesn't include our specific SRPs, or how at PES what you would do with a fire drill, like you go outside, you take a roll, you hold up green for good, red, we're missing somebody, and then radio, so we just talked through that, and then we emailed it out to one of our subs, and this is great, so just an example of, one of the things that we can solve those kind of things.
I was thinking of that as an idea that if we want, we can have parent evenings, parent engagement, which we're gonna need to do, as a result of planning for our integrated guidance funding and expenses into this year anyway. So some of it could be public forum and information, but other pieces of it could be, can we post some, 3-minute videos on a web page that provide some community information, or that can be sent out for people to be able to view. You can put them on YouTube, our board meetings are on YouTube, so you just have to access through that way.
And thing you have to be careful about is putting the protocols, like what you share, because there are some things that we don't want people to know.
Yeah, that was one of our questions this morning when we had a conversation about, what do we not share?
Sure.
So, because if somebody's gonna do something, they're gonna find the loopholes in our plan.
Other thoughts, comments, agreement, do something different?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to see us at least train at least once a year as administrators with district administrators, because in the event that there would be a school shooting, let's say at PES, it's not going to affect just PES. It's going to affect Clemens, the high school, middle school, and I had the opportunity to go through this in the previous district where we did this every year. We'd tabletop drill, and we'd be in different rooms, and we'd all be, we'd simulate this drill going on and how we communicate and who we communicate with. It can be chaos.
And there are local agencies that do incident command training, so they could probably find someone to facilitate that training for you. So, and actually, I attended one of the sessions at OSBA a couple summers ago. I can't remember who taught it. I'll see if I have it in my notes, but he actually is one of the services that OSBA will send someone if there is an incident, whether it be wildfire, because for some reason that seems like the worst, or the least worst thing in my mind right now. And so that might be something that they also have trainers who can facilitate, but the county does.
We can start at local with the fire department, because they have an incident command on just about everything that they go to. They set up incident command, they have a commander, and then everybody else, underneath them. So they would be a good resource, I would think, to teach us how to set up something like that.
Yep, I agree.
In your earlier slide, the rough traffic abatement protocol,
Yep.
you had, Shelty or something about those lights and something, about dropping the blinds. Should that be, like, if you're trying to.
Well, yeah, that's part of the shelter.
Okay, it didn't say that on the slide, it said lights and something, but.
Right, they just want to quick lock lights out of sight.
Yeah.
So it just, there's those quick phrases to be able to then cause.
So out of sight means dropping.
Yeah.
And the blinds are, it's safe to do so. I mean, if there's somebody going outside, right outside the window where the blinds are, you don't want to be standing up there pulling the blinds down.
Correct.
So yeah, that's all conditional.
Yeah, there's the, unsafe situation inside the building, unsafe situation outside the building. And we do talk with our staff about, we don't train on this, but run, hide, fight. It's kind of another layer thing that we talk about, just in that situational, but that's like another kind of knowledge base of that goes along with, you do lockdown, but if you're out on the playground, people ask me, what do I do on the playground? Then you're directing them, you're in a run, hide, fight situation, because you can't lock down, you can't get back, if you're out there. So.
Yeah, so we had an agreement at the elementary school that public work, one of the public works bays would be available, that now you can't access the public works yard, openly from the district, so then it becomes, what is it? So it's things like that that are constantly in flux that we need to take a look at.
I'm sure this goes without saying, but I'm assuming with all these drills and everything we do to give the kids tools to cope with all this, we're doing a no fear type atmosphere, right? Because the last thing we want the kids to do is be afraid of school.
One of the things that I appreciate so much in our school staff is the preparation of being able to say, today we are going to do an earthquake drill. This is not a real earthquake. But the other thing is there's a knowledge of students who have sensory needs or issues. And so if we're doing a drill and students need to be headphoned, or we need to take a student outside a few minutes early to be able to take care of business, that's always taken into consideration. That's something that I appreciate so much about our schools.
When we do lockdown drills at CPS, we do with police, with staff, but when we do it with students, we do not do it with police.
Oh.
We did that one time and
It was quite scary, yeah.
Yeah, we see stories, there have been very bad decision-making processes happening in districts doing lockdown drills with students where they've been horrifically traumatized.
Oh, sure, because the whole idea is so
Ones where
scary.
they literally pretend like it really is happening, and
Mhm.
they're traumatized.
I mean, there's more than students in advance that was gonna be happening, so.
That's why I made sure.
No, this is great. I really appreciated the conversation this evening.
Another community partner that would be a good outreach is the hospital system, because they do armed intruder drills, lockdown drills, all sorts of things at the hospital. They actually do live action, hiring actors, bringing them in drills, because they find that for staff, these are adults obviously, but for staff, it's important to have a little bit of a sense that it's a real thing. But they also just have to have tremendous systems in place, because I believe it's the second most dangerous place to work. Schools, hospitals, firefighters, police, I think is the order.
Would you have a contact?
I do, actually.
So, thank you. That's all I got.
And there's no conflict of interest, it's not working anymore.
So my request of our life would be, are you okay with us moving forward in the suggestions that we put forward?
Yeah.
Continuing to be able to report back. The lenses, like we talked about, of partnership, policy, procedure, and learning, professional peer, and being able to do that. And continuing to come back with information, to be able to make sure that we constantly are keeping the board updated.
Yes.
I'd like Joey to get some information on changing some of those windows out. Cost and whether it's even feasible to do that.
I wonder how many classrooms that actually boils down to.
I don't know.
Because could it be one window in those classrooms that have no?
Well, I don't think one window would be better than one.
I don't think you have to replace all the windows, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying replace all of them.
And that's my getting at, one per
Access
classroom.
out at least through one window,
Right.
Is
Is there 12? Okay.
Total. It's very likely that schools old enough now that energy trust order might kick in.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Normally they make you replace all the windows is the catch,
Yeah,
but that might be something you look into.
yeah.
Because if in fact energy trust has a new efficiency, and it's cheaper to replace all windows with a grant than doing 12 windows.
Right.
That's something to look into, 'cause I know they've updated efficiencies, 2025 has new requirements than the last previous 5 years.
But we'll just let Joey handle that, and Dell, if he can, whatever he thinks would be the best way to go, and then, he can bring that to the board and say, hey, this is what I found.
No, I think that's
Do
good.
you have any fire ladder escapes on the second story? Even like the chains that hang in the window that you brought down? So that's probably something that should be available.
We talked about that years ago. It was a brief conversation.
And the ladder truck's not very far away, but even if one or two classrooms have those fire, like we have to have them in our rental houses by law.
Right.
For a two-story house.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic, because school doesn't have to have them, but.
I know, right?
I thought of one other thing, we're talking about education, drills, all of that. It might be really helpful if there was, some education that went out to families around the procedure of notification when, should ever and will not ever happen if there is a real emergency. So that they understand, don't come to the school, you will be notified, you will be told where the reunification location is if an incident occurs.
I wonder if one thing we could do as we continue to plan and prepare and communicate is if we have a demonstrator, teacher, whatever anybody does, we have parents, and we share that, parents in our handbook or something, and that way parents will know exactly what we're doing, what the expectation is.
I think it would be really amazing if parents had to do lockdown drills in their kids' classrooms. Genuinely, across the whole country, if parents had to see the emotional trauma and devastation that years and years and years and years and years of lockdown drills is doing to our kids, and we wonder why we have a depressed society, if parents had to do that, maybe that would actually create.
So you want to traumatize the parents instead? Sure.
100% of the time, I would rather be traumatized than have my child traumatized.
Well, no, you're missing my point.
I'm just saying, I
But,
think.
I think it's, I can
Things would be
remember,
helpful.
remember the days a million years ago, that you'd take home the fire drill and fire escape plan, and you go through it with your family at home.
Yeah.
Is that something that, we're doing earthquake drills at the school. Might you think about doing, an earthquake drill at your home? Or,
Do you guys not do earthquake drills at your house?
so,
The Great Oregon Shakeout, or Shakeout?
yeah, that's what it is.
We work from home, so
Yeah.
we
so
do it.
it's-
My husband and I jokingly would do it under our desks at home.
There's lots of
Our
opportunity.
workplaces are doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually think that, anytime we can build empathy with people who might not really fully understand the ramifications of what's happening. I think that's
Absolutely. I agree.
positive. Plus, it would be kind of funny to see some of the parents trying to come to desks, me included.
I think to
Just
recap,
piecemeal.
it would be important that we have that no trespass district-wide ready for at any instant. Because again, it's immediate, deal with it later.
And it's there. It's there now.
Okay,
Yeah.
district-wide?
Yeah, because that's where we went, was district.
Okay.
And,
Because like Eric
Yeah.
said, I don't expect any administrative educator to be trained in a situation to deal with an aggressive parent. That's not what anybody was hired for, is to be a bouncer here. They were hired to educate, so it should be
That's who we
immediate.
should hire to do the training.
When the police department deal with it, just instantly ban the property, sorted out by parents.
yeah, and knowing that, we're always gonna have to offer a second letter, which is fine. Because one of the things that the police want too is, they want specifically in the letter, the duration. We're not gonna know the duration from the
Yeah,
outset,
no,
but to follow up.
it could be 24-hour notice, it could just be open-ended until time.
Yep, I agree.
Until further notice.
Investigation.
Until further notice.
So we have a lot of action items. I've been taking a lot of notes because I am not always a trustworthy rememberer. Do we have like a timeline of when the next work session for a large group should be held? Because we do have questions, we have research to do, and I'll do some too. I don't know what the plan is.
This continues to be a focus It's gonna continue to be a focus in our administrative and our leadership group meetings. And we can certainly bring information back to the board. If the board wants to have another session, 3 months, 2 months, 6 months from now, we could look at doing that. Or it could be that you feel comfortable with the information that's coming back, and being able to do that. And then also, I think opening up some options like we talked about for parent education and also parent thought and comment, or community member thought and comment, would also be helpful.
I think it's mostly important that we keep up to date with it, and I'm sure it will in your administrative meetings. I don't know if we need another large work session or not. I think we should just play that by ear. Definitely want to get information back to the board during regular board meetings on what's going on. That's just sort of my feeling that, I can go for another meeting, I have no problem with that.
Maybe you can put it on your calendar for first part of January, give me January to look at that topic of having another meeting and, get together with the board, or you and I can talk with being board chair and superintendent and see if there's a need for another meeting.
You bet. And that can be asked for at any time, the board could say in January, we really like.
But
I agree.
I think between now and then gives us enough time to work on different things.
Yep.
Like Aaron said, there's a lot of things that need to be worked on.
Yep.
And it gives time to work through that process. And I think that's a realistic area is the first part of January, because then we're through the holidays and everything like that, so.
I would like to maybe speed the timeline on just a couple of the things that are action items on here. We already mentioned that updating the no trespass letter, because that's something that can really be done really quickly and distributed around. In fact, you may have done it during this meeting. Also, the backup battery option research for the magnetic locks, because I think we know if power goes out, it does tend to be before January. So I don't know if that's something that subject matter experts can work on sooner than that. Windows freak me out. I'm not gonna lie. The Windows, now that I know that, having not been aware of it previously, now that I am, I'm just but just a couple things that I think we could get to an answer sooner than 4 months from now.
Well, just so you don't misunderstand what I said, is that those things are gonna be worked on in the time frame between now and then.
Yes.
But in January, we'll look at what's been discussed and see if there's a need for another meeting, is what the January timeline is. It's not when those things are gonna come due. Like the battery backups, if we get them within a couple of weeks, that'd be great.
That's why I asked about a timeline
Yeah.
for action items on here, not just reporting.
And then the policy, the one policy change at least, I don't know, do we have any other policies?
I was gonna ask Michelle,
Yeah.
what other policies?
Minimally, might need a very, very brief policy committee meeting.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I would also like to look at policy JICM, which is our threats of violence policy, because I think that would be perfectly aligned for review at the same time. Hasn't been updated in 3.5 years now. So I do think that making sure that policy reflects any changes that we make to the notification policy as well. That's something we talked about in policy committee, is going through all of our policies and making sure that when we change something here, we've also reflected that change throughout all of the affected policies. Because OSBA does that, but sometimes we make changes that OSBA didn't request us to make. So I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence there.
I have one more thing to share, which is something that Steve and Jim and I have talked about. The way that our campus is set up, the main campus, is wide open to the public, and it's used as a community center during the day. That's been a concern of ours. I don't know where we start with that as far as signage or fencing. I would be hesitant on fencing, but some sort of signage like this is a school campus, these are the rules, stay away from the building, stay away from the kids. Some sort of guideline of expectation.
I think Wildcat has something like that on their campus, because they have that beautiful park area that I think is closed during the school day. So I wonder if we could just put it there and sign.
I might also be able to talk with somebody who works for the Florida News that we can.
Yeah.
I can share information with him, that he can be able to go out, just maybe.
Just maybe.
Is fencing something long-term to look at, like the main, or you're gonna call main campus, like high school, middle school connected there? Is there a reason at some point, is there a reason to look into starting some of the fencing at some point? In terms of if a kid, again, I was in Southtown, where I was in Lincoln Elementary, they had the fence in as, I didn't realize at the time that Southtown was kind of a bad area growing up, we didn't know that, but the Lincoln school was fenced in.
Right.
We weren't allowed outside unless it was fenced because of the neighborhood, just to keep a person from walking into the playground,
Right.
grabbing somebody, taking them out, or I'm assuming there's federal grants for some fencing of some sort of secure property.
It probably is.
I don't know if that's a concern about, because it is a wide open,
Right.
I don't know what that is.
Logistically, fencing, oh man, I'm sure you thought of this.
Oh,
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Joe, if you want me to research grants, let me know.
Go for it.
One of the things, Joey, in our conversation is concerned around, and this is where the board decision and health thought process is, it is a community park for a lot of the day, all the time. And we are very diligent about watching and knowing and seeing progress that people are moving, you know, either with a bike or with their dog or with their stroller. I mean, that's what it is. It's very innocent, wonderful, most of it, almost all the time, right? But we're also a school and it's a campus during the day, right? So navigating that, and then if I tell people they can't come, like that's gonna be a public thing, right? And so how do we teach them awareness and find middle ground while being good stewards into our community and in the neighborhood that only connects through the school, right? So that it's not I don't think it's easy, black, white, just sort of like, no. But it's like, how do we do this well to honor the community, but also honor the fact that we're a functioning school during the day, right? So.
I think that goes back to the community conversations.
Yep, I agree.
So they understand what we're here for. We're here first as a school to educate kids, and then as a recreation area for the general public. So they need to understand that, and they need to be taught that, because I'm sure a lot of them have no clue. You know, they think, well, it's open, we can go use it any time.
And the bike path leads to there. Maybe you'll end up in a park and go, where do I go now?
Yeah.
Well, it connects to the city park, and that's where they come over from, and they didn't realize they were walking into the campus, you know?
And sometimes fencing helps, like we grazed from Ball Hill to the Crestmont Land Trust, and when we fenced it, you're not fencing people out, you're fencing control points, gateways that it actually helped people navigate through that several mile section, because the fencing then had like signage, gateways, we weren't closing people out, we were fencing it, we're fencing for grazing, but it turned out to help like the cross-country bicycle riders and stuff understand. Then fencing wouldn't have to be the expensive chain link, like a high tensile woven wire that, just the fence is not stopping people, the fence is helping understand boundaries.
Right.
So it wouldn't have to
Just
be.
leave a 6-foot wide walkway from that neighborhood over to the park.
Yeah, so the
I
fence
mean,
wouldn't be.
My elementary school had something like that when I was growing up. It was like a long pathway that went right through all of the neighborhoods for all the kids who went to school. But it was just alongside the property, and so people who weren't going to the school went the other way on the path, and kids who were going to the school went through the school gate. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Don't let me know if you want me to help people.
I guess the only other thing would be, in terms of that, in terms of safety, it's almost more than after the fact thing, that surveillance cameras, things like that. I don't know how, in terms of the whole campus and the bike path and things like that, I don't know if we have any external cameras at the moment.
Not that far out.
Those are things to think about.
Dewey on the.
How to get Wi-Fi out there.
I mean, I knew there was one out there, right? But- So we have one on each building.
We just need sponsored by Lyric signs on a lot of our school properties, so we can get Wi-Fi out.
Okay, I just want to say thanks to everybody that's here, and not only for your time tonight, but for your time previously working on this and, you know, talking and trying to figure things out and whatnot. So it's greatly appreciated from the board level that we get this interaction with everybody here, sitting at the table and taking notes, whatever we need to do, and trying to figure out what is best for the staff and the students and everybody to make them safer. But I really do appreciate it as a board chair that, you know, all the time that you guys put into stuff, you know, not only for this meeting, but for everything else that you guys do.
As they say, you guys are the boots on the ground, we're just.
Yeah, well, that's why I had Susan lead the meeting, because, you know, they're the boots on the ground.
Sure.
Us five are not, we have a different role.
To add to that,
Figure out how to finance it.
every administrator is here. I still find the board meetings, I'm gonna use the word non-productive, if we're getting stuff out to pass. I would rather have meetings like this, where there's actually something going on and happening.
Most school boards do.
And so, to me, I find this more beneficial than coming to the board meeting, looking over charts and graphs and.
Yeah, and we've talked about being able to add school people as we come up into the year.
Well, my point, I guess, as a board, I would rather see you guys come to the board meeting and kind of make the board meeting more of a work session than us just getting information passed down.
Thank you.
Well, years ago, we used to have the administrators sit in at board meetings, and it got kind of, I won't say redundant, but they were there and didn't have a lot of input in the meeting, and they would have like 3 minutes to say what was going on at their school, and then, you know, they were done. So if we do that, we need to be careful on how we do it, so that it's not, we don't fall back into that we were doing before.
And be respectful of their time, they're in school all day.
Well, and we talked about doing just one or two at each meeting, right? Not everybody at every meeting.
Yes, I'm gonna end us online.
I do think Brian's talking about a work session though versus a board meeting, and those are